This conference will now be recorded.
Hello everyone, thank you very much for inviting me to speak today. My name's Jess Monaghan and I'm Director of Policy and Performance in the Open Access team at Springer Nature. And today I'm going to be talking about our recent white paper, Going for Gold, exploring the reach and impact of gold open access gold open access articles in hybrid journals. In 2021, Springer Nature commissioned an analysis of over 60,000 articles published in more than 1,200 of our hybrid journals. In my presentation today, I'm going to share the main findings from that analysis, which show a clear advantage in both reach and impact for articles published open access, that's OA, in hybrid journals, and this is compared to non-open access articles published in the same journals. And also, for the first time, we're also showing an advantage for full gold open access articles compared to subscription articles where an earlier version, such as a green open access accepted manuscript or a preprint, has been self-archived in an OA repository. So a quick bit of scene setting to begin with. Why does this matter and why did we conduct this research? Worldwide, there continues to be an increasing number of open access policies and mandates, as well as, in fact, updates to existing policy requirements. In 2021, there have been significant developments, including the policies developed by Plan S funders, the members of Coalition S, which came into effect in many cases in January for researchers funded by Coalition S members. And these policies require immediate open access for funded outputs. And that's an aim which we're very much in support of at Springer Nature, having also committed ourselves to the aim of achieving full and immediate open access for research. However, certain funders are requiring immediate open access but haven't chosen to fund article processing charges, APCs, for transformative journals, TJs. And these are titles that continue to offer a hybrid model, so allowing authors a choice of open access and subscription publication routes, but have committed to increasing open access uptake and eventually transitioning to full open access. And this unfortunately could have the effects of excluding many authors from selecting open access in hybrid journals by restricting the funding for publication only to those journals and authors that are covered by the transformative agreements between publishers and consortia or institutions, so transformative agreements sometimes referred to as TAs. In addition, some policies are increasing or seeking to increase the availability of earlier accepted manuscript versions, the AM, via green open access self-archiving. And these policies seem to conflict with the potential benefits to authors of publishing gold open access in hybrid journals, where immediate access is given to the gold standard version of record, which is preferred by researchers for both reading and citing. And publishers, including ourselves at Springer Nature, have set our arguments in favour of investment in full gold open access, as we strongly believe that a focus on subscription-tied green open access through sharing of accepted manuscripts, AMs, risks undermining the progress to full open access. The work that I'm speaking to today builds on two of our earlier white papers that demonstrated the increased reach and impact of open access articles. The first one that you can see on the left is assessing the open access effect for hybrid journals, which, as the title states, looks at hybrid journals. And on the right-hand side, we have our more recent paper, Open for All, which looked both at hybrid and fully open access articles. With this latest white paper that I'm speaking to today, Going for Gold, we've returned to the study of hybrid journals. And as I said, we're exploring for the first time not just whether gold open access articles achieve greater reach and impact compared to closed subscription articles, but also to subscription articles where an earlier version, such as an accepted manuscript or preprint, is publicly available in a repository. So just to speak quickly to the methodology and limitations before we get on to the findings, we asked David Stewart, an independent information professional, to analyse the reach and impact of over 60,000 articles which were published in 2018 across Springer Nature's hybrid journals. So this includes Springer, Palgrave Macmillan, and Nature.com's academic journals. As with our earlier study, the reach of these articles is measured with downloads and attention to the articles, and the impact is measured in citations. So in terms of sources, that means that the number of downloads is taken from the Springer Nature servers according to counter standards, and the attention is measured through altmetric.com's altmetric score, and the citations from Web of Science. The difference in impact and reach for the different publishing models was analysed using the statistical programming language R, using both the averages and also developing negative binomial regression models. So these take into account factors at the document level, at the article level, also the author level and also at the journal level, because there are a wide range of other factors that can influence the impact and reach of research publications besides just their OA status, and those could otherwise skew the results. Taking this data set of articles and the information we had about usage and citation and attention, articles were also classified into one of three categories using open access status as tracked in the Dimensions database. And you can see those definitions on the screen. So first of all, we have the Gold Open Access version of record, the VOR, and this is where there is immediate access on publication to the final published version of record for anyone with an internet connection. It's freely available to all in its final version. We also have the subscription version of record with earlier versions available in a repository, which throughout the white paper, for purposes of brevity, we've referred to as the early V, the early version. And this is where a self-archived copy of an earlier version of the article, whether that's the accepted manuscript or perhaps the preprint, is available publicly in a repository. And finally, we have the third access type, which is the subscription version of record, where there is no earlier version available tracked by Dimensions. So this is all other subscription articles. And this may in some cases include articles where there are perhaps versions that are shared on an academic social network or perhaps illegally elsewhere that isn't tracked officially by Dimensions. Now, onto the main findings now that we've covered some of the mechanics. And the headline is that, as we've seen in previous studies, articles published via the Gold Open Access route in hybrid journals on average achieve greater reach and greater impact compared to subscription articles. And this includes both non-open access articles, as we previously looked at, but also for the first time, articles with an earlier version available. I'm going to dig into that now in just a little bit more detail, although I know that time is tight, so I'm going to have to speak briefly. So first, to look at citations. When we look at both the average citations and the model predictions, we can see an open access advantage for all, citation advantage for all open access articles. So you can see on the graph, Gold Open Access has the greatest citation advantage, and this is 1.64 times higher than non-open access articles, or 2.12 times higher in the predictive model that corrects for journal and article level factors. And Gold Open Access also has a higher citation advantage compared to subscription articles with earlier versions available, which only achieve 1.07 times higher citations than non-open access, or 1.17 times higher in the model. Moving on to downloads, we can see that Gold Open Access also achieves greater reach. From the analysis, as you can see in the graph, it delivers a significant advantage over non-open access articles with 6.02 times more downloads than non-open access on average. Subscription articles with earlier versions available have 1.08 times more downloads compared to non-open access articles. But the caveat here to note is obviously that measuring comparative downloads here is limited, as our study focuses on usage on Springer Nature platforms. So we're not capturing the usage of those subscription articles where earlier versions are available in repositories. So I think in that case, a lower advantage is to be expected because we are capturing downloads of the article on the journal website. However, while there may be usage of earlier versions elsewhere, this usage may be of a version less valued by researchers. Our earlier 2021 white paper, Exploring Researcher Preference for the Version of Record, found that researchers prefer to read and cite the final version of Record, with 83% of respondents preferring working with the final version of Record for citing content in their own work, compared with only 9% favouring accepted manuscripts and 2% preprints. And finally, moving to attention, Gold Open Access achieves increased attention. So on average, Gold Open Access articles have 4.91 times as high an altmetric attention score as non-open access articles, while subscription articles with earlier versions available have 2.10 times as high an altmetric score as non-open access articles. Now, to quickly whiz through, I'm afraid I don't have time to talk in a lot of detail to this, but more detail is available in the white paper itself. We looked at disciplinary differences, as we know that as well as being a difference in the prevalence of open access in different subject areas, can potentially also be differences in citation behaviour, downloads and altmetric attention scores. So in the discipline breakdown that you can see in the white paper, we considered 6 of the largest categories, which contained over 3,900 articles each. So this included medicine and public health, engineering, life sciences, chemistry, mathematics, and materials science. And this accounts for 59% of the total articles in our 60,000 article dataset. And in each of the 6 largest discipline categories, we can see there's a citation advantage for Gold Open Access compared to non-open access. So the Gold OA predicted citation advantage ranges from 1.15 times as many citations in materials science to 3.61 times as many in the life sciences. And this outweighs the advantage for subscription articles with an earlier version available. Moving on to downloads. Unsurprisingly, across all the subject areas, Gold Open Access articles always had more downloads than both non-open access and subscription articles with an earlier version available. And this ranged from 3.79 times as many in mathematics to 6.13 times as many in life sciences. And as I mentioned, in part, this can be attributed to the fact that downloads away from journal websites aren't being counted. But obviously here we are focusing on the benefits that accrue from access to the version of record. And finally, in terms of discipline attention, both Gold Open Access articles and subscription articles with an earlier version available have a larger altmetric score advantage over non-OA articles in all of the disciplines. But typically, as we saw on average, at the higher level of the dataset, there is a far larger Gold Open Access advantage. Subscription articles with an early version do appear to show a slightly larger advantage in chemistry, but this disappears in the predictive model, which corrects for those journal and article level outliers and other factors. So I'm out of time now, moving on to conclusions and recommendations. In setting out to update our analysis of hybrid journals and the impact of open access, we really wanted to better understand the continued advantage to those Springer Nature authors who are choosing immediate Gold Open Access, and also to those institutions and research funders who provide funding for Gold Open Access. We're really pleased that our findings show not only that Gold Open Access articles attract more citations, more downloads, and higher altmetric attention scores on average compared with non-open access articles, but also for the first time, we've shown evidence of a stronger advantage for Gold Open Access compared to those subscription articles where there is an earlier version publicly available. And we believe this really presents a robust case for continued funding and investment for full and immediate Gold Open Access in hybrid journals. For Springer Nature authors who've selected the Gold Open Access publishing route, there really is a clear evidence that their work has benefited from increased attention and reach. Efforts which seek to increase the availability of green open access earlier versions just don't create the intended benefits and risk delaying or even preventing the take-up of full Gold Open Access and achieving the benefits of that greater reach and impact that go with it. And while sharing of subscription-tied earlier versions of manuscripts may help with the dissemination of research, they don't have a stronger reach or an impact as full Gold Open Access version records, and critically, they remain dependent on the continuation of subscription models in order to fund those costs of editorial and publishing processes that validate and improve the manuscript. And as such, we believe investment in Gold Open Access should be a priority, as it's the only way to achieve full and immediate sustainable open access. Thank you very much for your time. You can download the white paper on our website at Going for Gold, and please do follow up with questions. Thank you very much.